All right, welcome to the module. I am pretty excited to get into this module. All right, so here's kind of what we went over and left off on the last one. And I want to introduce some new principles that you'll have to pursue and internalize. You'll have to find some material and some resources that are going to teach you more about them. Our Mechanic to Millionaire podcast goes into these principles in a very deep way. So if you're familiar with the podcast, either on iTunes, Stitcher, there's just different podcast apps, and they're usually exclusive to the type of phone that you have and the service that you have. But every smartphone has a podcast, and it's called Mechanic to Millionaire podcast. And I would start at show number 1 because it goes like a lesson course. And you just go from show number 1 to show number 2. And if you go to the website, you could listen to them there as well. It's not as easy or convenient because you could be listening to the podcast in your car through your Bluetooth while you're driving, or if you want to be in your office studying, you could do it through the computer. But it's mechanictomillionaire.com. And so there's other resources as well that I bring up in that podcast. And I'll link a couple videos below this video in YouTube that you can click on. So I'll figure out how to put those in. But there's 2 videos that I'm kind of inspired me to go into this in the direction that I am. So let's start with a new page. And I think at this point, you're getting a sense of this process of internalization. And I have my notes right here. So let me just read what I put. You're getting a sense of the process of internalizing principles and making new connections or associations within your mind. Interrelationships is what I like to call them. And that improves our insight. That'll improve my insight. That'll improve your insight. And these correlations that we can now make and bring to view within our mind. So if you're thinking about, let's take gardening for instance. The more you expose yourself to the different types of gardening and the different landscapes and the different plants and the different types of watering systems and the fertilizers and the decorative bricks and rocks and bark and all of these different things, as you get exposed to a vast array of those, it's going to give you more felicity, ease of coming up with your own designs by making those correlations and taking a little bit from one, a little bit from another, a little bit from another one, a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and all of a sudden you create something that's unique to you because you've been exposed to so much. And that's what principles will do for us. And it does matter, the principles. Like, we all obey the principle of gravity, and that's only going to get you so far in life. There are other principles that are more subtle and more important to the results that you're getting in your life. And I want to bring those out and bring those into your awareness and talk about how they correlate with everything we've been talking about when it comes to your isogenics business, your leadership capabilities or abilities. So I hope at this point, after listening to all the modules up to this point, you're starting to get an understanding that there are these kind of abstract things. There's these ideas and these philosophies and these definitions and concepts that really define these principles and help us to understand them on a deeper, more profound level. Okay, so which allows us to make these new connections, and they're going to have everything to do with how I act, how I behave, my attitude, and how my attitude could be really good at one point, but then I reach a certain challenge or a certain obstacle, and all of a sudden my attitude starts to go south, and I start to get negative results, and my energy goes low, and my actions go low. We're going to talk about all of this and how the principles determine what your attitude is, and they say attitude determines altitude. Your attitude through this whole process is going to determine in each leadership level where you get to on that scale before you get discouraged, and whether you push through that discouragement based on your understanding of these principles that help you to get through those challenges in a knowing way versus getting discouraged and not knowing what to do at that point. And an unknowing mind or a confused mind becomes paralyzed and the progress stops. So what makes the difference that's going to push somebody through and whether or not they quit or succeed is going to be based on the principles that they understand, these correlations and these interrelationships that help them in that moment, right? So as we learn the principles and we have this new perspective, where I used to get stuck is no longer a problem for me. It doesn't affect my attitude, it doesn't affect my energy and my actions, and I just get right through it. Where before I used to get stuck at that point. And that was a big part of the contrast that I saw so clearly because of my commitment to excellence and my kept getting stuck. And I experienced that for years. For decades I experienced that in my life. And it was very frustrating because I wanted to on a scale of 1 to 10 accomplishing your goals, I wanted to get to 10. And my 10 was a pretty high 10, like I was dreaming big for myself. And no matter how hard I worked, and no matter how much I applied what I knew to do, and the different guidance that I received from different people, different books, and I still wasn't getting past it. And so when I started to get the right information and the right principles, these more subtle principles, which very few people talk about and even fewer people know how to teach, is what started to make the difference. And I could see the contrast for me so clearly in my life that it's like that's become part of my destiny, is teaching those principles. Isogenics is the vehicle for me to help teach those principles to people in their lives so that they can move forward and progress. Okay, so getting a sense, at this point you should be getting a sense of the process of internalizing principles and making new connections and associations. I like to call those interrelationships that improve my insight to producing through certain efficient acts that I couldn't perform prior to learning those principles. I didn't know that I didn't know. And that improves my behaviors, which improves my results. And the better the results, the more I'm going to be getting the things that I want, right? So we're moving forward. Again, Napoleon Hill, and I said this before, a successful person is somebody who is so disciplined, not luck, or keep doing it and fake it till you make it. A successful person is somebody who has so disciplined the faculties of their mind, they can have anything they want or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. So whatever it is you set as the goal, you know the principles that will get you there. There's still going to be this work that I need to do to put myself in alignment with being the person that can have that thing that I don't yet have. But the principles teach me the work that I do. And all of that is within me. So it's all accomplishable. There are no unknown variables when you understand enough of these principles. There's no unknown variables. There's nothing outside of you that could stop you. You know that the work has to do with, I know that the work has to do with me. And so it's a matter of me overcoming my habits, overcoming my behaviors. Maybe I want something, but I'm not quite ready to step into that because I don't have the courage, or I don't want to put the time into it. I don't want to discipline myself right now because that's a lot of work. And but I know now at this point what's keeping me from getting those things, where before I was blindsided. It was so frustrating that I didn't know how to get to that 10. And so now I do, but it's still a matter of doing the work. And am I going to procrastinate that? Am I going to be a rut dweller and let my habits overcome me? All right, so let me grab this here. I want to just come back to this one here, where we have this graph on a scale of 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, scale of 1 to 10. And we want to get to the 10. That's the goal, right? We want to be a 10 in all of our goals. But this right here, we have two graphs, right? This is the personal development. So what I want to do is maybe piggyback this off of how Napoleon Hill describes it, because I think it sinks in a little bit more of realizing, okay, this is an internal process. Disciplining my mental faculties. So the way I had drawn this out before was I put personal development, like rating yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Where am I with my personal development? Remember, the goals would be down here, and what I'm pursuing in my life, whatever area it is going to be a direct correlation. If I'm a 3, then I'm a 3 down there as well, if you remember that. So it's disciplining my mental faculties based on becoming aware of new associations through understanding law or principles. So we sometimes hear Jack Canfield wrote a book called The Laws of Success. Sterling W. Sills wrote a book called The 21 Laws of Success or something like that. Training the faculties of my mind. In the Old Testament, I think it's King Solomon that said, in all thy getting, get understanding. It's greater than rubies and pearls. In fact, getting understanding is the pearl of great price, because it will let you have any amount of pearls and rubies and homes and lands, and all of those things are a byproduct of getting that understanding that allows you to acquire anything you desire or its equivalent without violating the rights of others. And it's so cool because these laws, everybody's a win. Everybody's a win. You're not taking from anybody. There's no competition. It's actually abundance. Like a tomato plant will just keep growing more and more tomatoes. I've grown tomatoes in our backyard before, and they'll overtake the whole thing if you don't watch out. You've got to prune them, and otherwise they just keep growing and growing. Sterling W. Sills talks about that, the law of abundance, and how there is so much of everything. We'll never run out. And if there's ever a need, there will always be something there to supply that need. He talks about the sun and how just a fraction, a sliver of the sun hits the earth to give it life and to warm it and to produce and maintain life. All of the rest of the sun's rays go off into cold, dark space. I mean, it's a lot of waste. And with my tomato garden, there was a lot of wasted tomatoes. It's not about not having enough. So there's a principle to abundance. So what we want to do in our efforts, in our time that's worthy of our time and really should be our number one priority, is learning principles that take me up on that scale for my personal development, my ability to discipline my mental faculties as I'm pursuing, let's just put it down here, the goals. So as I'm pursuing the goals, 1 to 10, right, and everything in between, as I'm disciplining my mental faculties, I'm going to apply all of this. Let's go with red. I'm going to apply all of these things that I'm starting to learn, these new correlations and interrelationships in which affect my attitude, is now going to be applied towards my goals. And as I improve my mental faculties, which is going to improve my behaviors and my actions, and also, which through the law of attraction is that divine part where all of the right things start coming to me. So I can be in control of my actions and my behaviors, but there's still a greater power that's instituted through my mental faculties. And that is the right people start showing up. They start like a magnet. That's why they call it attraction. It's like a magnet, and the right things start coming to you based on the way you're disciplining and self-governing. Okay. I'm tempted to share a story that came into my mind. Yeah, I'm going to share it. So I don't want you to be offended. Look, I'm a faith-based person. I have no judgment on what everybody else wants to believe, but I am of faith with my religion, my philosophy, and the gospel. But there's a story, and the reason I say that is, and preface that way, is because there's a lot of people of faith that believe that God's in control of every single aspect of your life, and that every good thing and every bad thing He is making or not making happen to you. And that's just not how it works. He's not sitting there micromanaging your life. He has set up the entire universe so that it's self-containing, like it's just like everything operates based on these laws of cause and effect. And so I'm not saying God can't step in and do miracles, but for the vast majority of us, for the vast majority of our lives, we have to figure these things out and learn how to grow and how to become. It's a learning process. And if there was something outside of me that's controlling everything I do, maybe I'm deserving of it, but then that person doesn't allow me to have that thing that I deserve, it wouldn't work. That wouldn't be like a great learning environment, and it doesn't work that way. So I want to kind of share, I'm not taking God out of this, I'm totally bringing God into it. These are His principles, it's His laws. I love how Jim Rohn says, if you don't like it, well, that's too bad. You're a guest here on this planet. And when you make your own planet, you can make your own rules. But right now, you're a guest, and you have to comply to the rules, right? You don't have to, but if you want positive results, you do. So there's a story of a farmer who has a beautiful farm. I mean, everything is just perfect. I mean, I could just see it because I love looking at landscapes, and I love the different varieties and the way things can be set up and compartmentalized, and you have your fencing and flower beds and just all of that, and a perfectly mown lawn. So imagine this beautiful farm and with orchards that are just perfectly manicured, and the house and the painting and the shutters by the windows. I mean, it's just a beautiful, beautiful farm. And all of the crops, the fields, everything's just perfectly manicured. There's no weeds. It's green, it's thriving, it's lush. And a preacher comes by on his carriage, and he waves the farmer down out in the field, and he says, wow, God has really blessed you with such a beautiful farm. And the farmer says, well, that may be true, but you should have seen it when he had it all to himself. Right? So now you could go back into your mind and think, when the farmer didn't conceptualize the farm and do the work and the labor and bring everything together in the way that it was all weeds. It was all, there was no apparent beauty like there is now. It was just overgrown, and there was things out of place, right? So it's just a field. And so there is a part that we play that is essential, and we must realize that part that we play in order to receive these blessings that God really has already given us. We just haven't received them yet because we haven't learned how to receive. We haven't learned correctly. We haven't been taught. We weren't put on the right pathway to learn how to receive these blessings. So people could look at my life now and, like the preacher saying to the farmer, wow, you have such a blessed life. I mean, God has been so good to you. And I could say, well, you should have seen what God was doing with my life before I was where I am now and before I did the work, like the farmer did the work, right? So I was at a point in my life where stressed out, I was unhealthy, I was sick, I was praying for God to take my life because I was so miserable, and my depression and my fatigue and not getting the things that I wanted in spite of my best efforts, and life is hard and then you die, so I'm ready to go now. Just take me now, I'm ready to go to heaven so that I can be rid of this pain, right? That's where my life was before. Was God still around then? Yes, He was still around. And so it wasn't until I learned and became open to receiving the right principles and aligning my life with those principles, which are instituted by God. So people think the commandments are there to restrict you. No, I'm telling you, I'm striving to understand and obey every commandment. I can flip that word for you and say every principle or every law of the universe. Nonetheless, there's a supreme being over all of that who's put it all together. I call that God. So I had to come in alignment and obey those laws, but I didn't know those laws until I was ready to receive them, and I was even actually obeying some laws that brought me more of those principles and things. They weren't happening in my life. So there was a part, infinitesimal part compared to the blessings that God really has blessed me with, but there's an infinitesimal part, but essential nonetheless, that I have to do. My personal responsibility. And once I put my life in, once I understand those and internalize them and reason, a very profound reasoning within myself and see the correlations and then put my actions in alignment with them, man, all of my prayers are being answered. And that's where the abundance, that's what King Solomon's talking about, and all thy getting, get understanding. So I want to know as many commandments as I can. I want to know as many principles or laws, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, really any kind of religious teaching is going to teach you to obey some kind of principle that's going to start bringing blessings into your life. All right, so this is point number one. And I just want to get across the way I act and behave now is much different because I understand these abstract principles, right? We can look at gravity and say, okay, when I jump, I come back down. That's something we can see with our physical senses. But when you try to explain gravity, it's kind of like explaining the taste of salt. It's something you come to experience. It's something that you come to gain an understanding and a conceptualization of that starts to govern your behavior. Okay, so let's move on to point number two. I'm just going to move these across. So point number two is through study, experience, and a deep and profound reasoning. And I like to call that critical thinking, and people just don't do it too often. In fact, they say less than 50% of people read a book all the way through after a secondary education. So less than 1 out of 2 people are reading a book all the way through. So there's not a whole lot of critical thinking that's going on out there. There's not a whole lot of internalizing and reasoning and making these interrelationships that are going on out there. So through study, experience, and a deep and profound reasoning, you build a profound will. And I totally want to come back to this. I kind of need to make this so that we're going to be able to see it all, because I'm going to draw lines and correlations between the different things. So let's see if I can do that here. So we'll go with I'm going to put principle number 2. And we'll say through study, experience, and reasoning. And I mean a deep reasoning where you quiet your environment, you quiet yourself, you turn the TV off, you turn the radio off, you get into your place of study, you get into your closet, and you start to really profoundly study, reason, look at the experiences, study some more, get some things opened up into your awareness, and then you start to reason out, what if I would have done this based on what I just learned? And again, most people don't do that. So many never quiet themselves and their environment. And also another thing on top of that is getting the right principles. So there's these correlations that have to happen, almost like the planets aligning. So not only do you need to quiet yourself, which most people don't do, I'm going to say probably about 2% will do this. 95% would rather die than think. And 3% think they think. They're the know-it-alls, and they're not open to learning more. But 2% actually do this type of thinking, but we want to increase that. And we're in a day and age where we can, because information is now available at our fingertips. So many never quiet themselves and their environment, and also never quite get on the right path or discover the right vehicle to really actualize the things that they're learning and put them into action and facilitate them and start moving their lives forward. That's what I love about Isogenics. It's like, I call it a divinely inspired company for so many reasons, but it's the perfect learning environment for taking these things and these principles that we're learning and put them into action and see the improvements. And the improvements are going to be a lot of things that are divine, which is going to be making an impact in other people's lives, making an impact in your own, bringing more abundance into your life, like the tomato plants that just keep growing and growing and growing, right? So we can just keep increasing our income, have more resources, have more opportunities. have more enjoyment. So along with that is getting on the right, let's see, how do I want to do this? Pathway and the right vehicle. And we're not here by accident. Isogenics is not here by accident. Kathy Coover said from the stage, me and Jim now believe that this is the reason we were born. This is our purpose for being here on this earth at this time, is to help create this company. And it's bigger than us because of the impacts that it's making. So through practice, recognition, and experience, it builds confidence. This is so important because we're going to come back to this and how this ties into what we've been talking about all along in all the modules. So let's just use, we'll go red. So through practice, recognition, recognizing, like you're able to see the contrast between one behavior ruled by one set of principles and the results that are produced by another behavior that are the result of another type of behavior governed by a different set of principles, or an improved principle, an improved understanding. So practice, recognition, experience, let's see, builds confidence. It builds confidence, it builds assurance, it builds excitement. Let's see, what else do we got here? And so through practice, recognition, experience, it builds confidence and excitement. And it can build it even more and more, which makes for, so this excitement can continue to increase because now I'm an advancing man. I'm somebody who knows why I'm doing it and what's going to result from doing that. So this right here will create bigger and bigger ideas. Bigger and bigger ideas. You're starting to make bigger correlations because of the confidence that's building, the results that you're getting, the recognition and the experience. You're doing it right. It's like in the movie Hook, where Robin Williams is playing Peter Pan, and they say, "You're doing it, Peter." When he started to learn how to imagine, and the imagination became a reality. I love that line. You're doing it, Peter. What you realize through this practice, recognition, experience, reasoning, and the results that we're getting is, and that's the whole thing about this, is that you're getting the results you're wanting. That just leads to that advancing, human being that can now think bigger, can make bigger goals. The expansion that happens through that, you make new interrelationships based on your confidence in that bigger thing becoming a reality. And that's what's happening right now. And I think a lot of people are attuned to that in the world. Again, that's bringing heaven to earth, and that's what we're involved in here. Literally, greater progress, greater results. So how does one get to this point where we can create these bigger and bigger things? Like the things that I've created in my life are much bigger. In fact, I passed up my dreams a long time ago. The dreams that I had back when I was first getting started, we passed those up a long time ago. It was like new tires on my old car, and going to a restaurant and a movie at the same time, the same evening, and doing some of these other things, having newer clothes, to that going to our new home. That was probably the biggest dream that I had at that time. Was the ultimate, was like just getting a new home. Well, now we're beyond that. Now we have apartments and go on all these vacations and different things like that. So there's, and the impact, and getting to that level 4 and level 5 leadership where it's more about others. That's expanded. So those are bigger and bigger ideas, bringing heaven to earth. I didn't start out with that in mind when I started my Isogenics business and this journey. So how do you get there? It all goes back to this right here. You get there by starting here and just incrementally increasing in wisdom and understanding. which is the greatest pearl of great price. It will bring all other things into your experience. All right? So let's see. Again, on this, I just want to emphasize so many people never quiet themselves to get to that place of reasoning. They would rather die than do that. But the thing is, they're trying to pursue those things that they want down here, their goals. They want to reach their goals. They want to have the free time. They want to have the quality life. They want to own their lives. Yet they're not willing to do the things that it takes to move forward ignorantly. They're not wanting to do it ignorantly because they're putting a lot of effort and time and frustration into trying to get that 10 with their goals. If they just knew the correct way to do it, it'd be so much easier. And so it's just, again, Bob Proctor says the number one problem in the world is ignorance. And it's an ignorance to understanding, these principles. All right, so let's go to point number 3. Whoops. Wrong one. And learn how to do this thing once and for all. Okay. Point number 3. So there's a personal responsibility over there, right? Nobody can do your push-ups for you. And Jerry Seinfeld was going to be the closing speaker at a big couple-day seminar for comedians to learn how to be funny. And, there was empty seats all throughout the seminar, but when Jerry Seinfeld, it was his turn to speak and close out the seminar, there wasn't an empty seat in the entire auditorium. And there's his name on a big banner, and he walks out to the podium, stands in front of the podium, doesn't say a word. The banner behind him drops, and behind it are the words, "Do the work." And he walks off the stage without saying a word. People know what to do, and maybe, well, let me take that back. A lot of times people don't know what to do. That's what the whole modules is about, is sharing, some of the things that we need to do, some of these principles and ideas. But even when they're given the information, they still don't do it. So one of the things we could say is, you can't do your push-ups for you. I could do push-ups, and I could do them really well, and I can do them every day, but that's not going to help you with building the muscle that it takes to do those push-ups. So you have to do the work. And again, I'm not tied to whether or not each and every one of you are going to do the work. I know at least I'm getting something in there if you're watching these, and I know that there are going to be some people who do the work. In the parable of the sower, there's going to be some people that just land on hard soil. They'll listen to this. Well, the hard soil would be, you're going to invite them to listen to this, and they never watch, not even one of them. Then there are some who will watch it, and then they might get excited, but then distractions get them, and the birds come and carry them away, right? That's the seed that falls by the wayside or on top of the soil, and the birds come and take them away. There's some that get caught among the thorns and the thistles. That's those who get carried away by the cares of the world. Those that are distracted. Like, all distractions are equal. And it's kind of like that movie Up, where the dogs are always like, they're doing something, and then all of a sudden one of them says squirrel, and they see a squirrel, and all of a sudden their attention that was on this thing all of a sudden goes over there. Okay, these are identifying people with different levels on the scales of leadership. Right? Somebody who's at a 5 isn't going to even hear squirrel. They're going to stay focused on the thing that they know they need to be focused on, and they're not going to get distracted. So somebody who's at a level 1 hears squirrel, and they go over there and they chase the squirrel, where a level 5 leader wouldn't even hear somebody say squirrel. They discipline their mental faculties to know that they need to stay focused on that thing. So they don't even hear, they don't even look to see if there's a squirrel over there, because they so trained their mental faculties based on the principles, these abstract principles that they've internalized and made these correlations and said, this serves me better to stay focused here, right? Okay, so when it comes to these different categories of, or these different levels of leadership, let's just do the first three. Level 1, 2, and 3, we have title, relationships, and what's the next one? Production. So if we go 1, title, 2, relationships, and 3, production. And we have the scales over here. Let's use a different color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And each one has its own scale for each category, right? For each level of leadership. And I also want to put up this here. The principles behind this right here, once you learn and internalize these, this is everything right here, you guys. This will be the majority of the work. So this one's celebrating over here. Yay. Okay. This is the inception stage. So this is where you're at now. This is your current state, your environment, everything that's happening in your life. Now, the inception stage happens where you are right now. You're conceiving of an idea. Something's been opened up to your awareness. You see the kind of lifestyle that Dave gets to live with his family and how they enjoy that, and those are the things that you want to do. So you start to have this, you start to internalize, and you have this inception that dawns on you, I want that. And so somebody's modeling for you some things that are appealing. Happens all the time, whether it's kind of car you're going to drive, you see somebody else driving it, or the way they've landscaped their house, or whatever the case might be, right? So we're always having these inception, and that's divine. There is something innately within us that wants to have a life of abundance and enjoyment. I was listening to Esther Hicks, and she said, the universe never gets tired of giving you more. It never says you had too much or you're selfish. In fact, I'll use the term universe. The laws want to keep giving you more. There's joy in giving, okay? Because there's something that comes back to the giver in receiving, and that is great joy in finding you having joy, right? So it never gets tired of you having more and more experiences and more abundance. Now, when you have this inception stage, let's say you're at, in any one of these levels, you're at a level 1. Let's just go to the lowest one, level 1, in any of these areas. And so the law of assumption is that you're going to assume you're already over here. We're going to 3 by 5 it. And we're going to write it out as though it's already a fact. I've already taken ownership of that thing that I've had this inception of, this idea. See, most people look at the goal and they want to try and get to the goal, but look, there's a big goalie. You don't know how you're going to get there. You may have some ideas on how you think you're going to get there, but I'm going to tell you how I've gotten to where I am today. Those have been divine connections and people that I didn't even know from areas that I didn't even know existed. That's God bringing in and building in the bridge when you do your part, okay? But it's without understanding the principles, it's pretty difficult to live the law of assumption without breaking some principles, and we'll get to those in a minute. So as you assume, okay, so you're assuming, when you're first introduced and somebody's modeling for you, so I do a presentation, people see my life before, they see my life how it is now, they start to conceptualize, that's what I want. And if he did it with this vehicle, I can do it with this vehicle. In the inception stage, energy is high, the actions are high, and how did I word it? Competency. You're improving the skills it takes, right, to be an Isagenix associate. You're going to improve those skills. in the inception stage. It's the highest. It's euphoric. That's why a lot of people quit and start over, because eventually when you're assuming and your energy's high and your actions are high and you're improving the skills, you're going to go into deception at a certain point. I don't know when. It's always different for everybody. There's a lot of commonality because there's a lot of commonalities in society. Here's the thing. You will get, if we go back to the goals, remember, let's draw this out. 2, 3, squeeze a 4 in there, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so if I'm at a 3 in my understanding of principles, which is going to determine my attitude. Attitude determines what? My altitude. So if I'm at a 3, come back down here. And remember, what determines our attitude? The internalization of principles and the correlations we've made within reasoning within ourselves, and that's going to cause us to respond or react. And when we get to a point where we don't know the principle on how to overcome that challenge, that's when our behavior, that's when we go into deception. So if I'm at a level 1, but it's going to take a level 3 leader for me to at least be experiencing some of the things that I'm assuming, that modeling that was handed for me. If I'm at a 1, but it takes a 3, I'm going to hit a deception at 2. I'll hit deception right there at 2. And you really have to think about these and reason them out and see the correlations and how they apply and how you've seen it apply with other people. So somebody else could be at a 4 when they get into isogenics, and so they get much closer to their 10 than somebody who's at a 1 who's not even going to start bridging the gap. So what happens is they get into deception right there because they don't know the principles. They have not disciplined their mind around the principles that know how to get past that challenge that's at a 2. That a level leader, that a leader at this level on the scale of 2 in that particular area, they know the principles. Their behavior is not going to go south until they at least hit a 2. Or and the person that's at a level 4 or a level 5 in their personal development and understanding principles, they're not going to hit the wall until they get to a level, until a level that's above where they're currently at. So when we hit that deception, again, the deception happens, I want to make this clear before I move on. So the deception, let's say you're at a 1, on your personal development. I'm at a 1 right here. Let's get red. When it comes to understanding the principles of production, getting people to produce as a leader, I'm going to be their leader and I'm going to teach them how to produce. When I come up against a level 2 problem, I'm going to hit that wall. And what happens with my behavior is my energy goes low. Sorry. My actions pretty much are going to stop or go low, and my improving skills stops. When I go to deception, why? Because you really don't have any other alternative, because you haven't developed in your mind how to keep your energy high and your actions high and keep improving your skills. You haven't learned the principles that are going to create the behavior to get through that deception, to get through this deception right here. So the unsuspecting person that doesn't know the principles and is learning the principles to become an advancing human being, where I'm improving my skills here. No, I'm improving my skills and my understanding of principles here. So maybe I go from a 1, now I'm going to put my time and effort into understanding these kind of hard to understand principles. They're subtle, they're kind of abstract, but if you internalize them enough and you exhaust enough resources, you'll start to make the interrelationships. So you move to a 2 and then a 3. Now what happened for just the production level? You know what that would do for you in income in isogenics, to go from a 1 to a 3 in your understanding principles, which impacts your energy, your actions, your skills. It's going to affect your attitude in a positive way. You're going to get through that deception that blocked you right here at the 2, and now you're going to be leading at a 3 because that's where you got, was a 3. And so what's going to happen to your income? What's going to happen to the people you start attracting to your business? What's going to, and even if people aren't at a 3 when they're attracted to your business, they're people who are prepared to be taken to a 3. Okay? So when you understand this, there is nothing outside of you that can stop your income from going up in isogenics. And that's why I say it's the perfect barometer to know if you're really growing, if you're really improving yourself. And it has to be here, up here with the principles. The principles. Now what happens for some people, yeah, let's see, do I have it? They'll study, they'll experience, they'll reason, but maybe they're not getting the exact names of these principles and these laws, like the law of non-resistance, the law of attraction, the law of assumption. But they've gone to seminars, they've been to Tony Robbins, and they're driven into them. You got to be positive. You got to stay positive. You got to stay in action. When you don't feel like doing it, you're going to get up and do it anyways. And so they have that so ingrained into them. They're doing the actions because they're being told that's what to do without really understanding the principle. And then when they start to do it, they start to see that they're getting the better results because they're behaving like they understand the principles. And that's kind of like why it's a difficult thing to really institute the law of attraction, because just so many people haven't bought into it yet. They haven't seen the correlations. They haven't made those interrelationships between the principles and learning those principles and the results. They've kind of happened upon them with some effort. So there are few people who have great success and stay positive. There are even fewer who understand the principles, the very subtle principles behind that success. We're changing that, though. We're changing that. It's not a losing battle. We're actually expanding it. We're winning. All right, so it's the deception that hits when you hit the level 2 challenges and you don't know the principles to overcome those challenges, and so you hit this wall. What separates winners from losers? And it's, let me come up a little bit further. Shrink this down just a little bit. What separates the winners from losers is the people who in one way or another are integrating, they're investing in their personality, their character, and their behaviors. They're investing in themselves and they're growing themselves is what's going to separate a person who gets stuck at level 2 or the person who gets past it. Okay? It's this is pretty simple stuff to understand. As far as I'm explaining it, it feels simple to me. Maybe you're like, I don't really get what he's saying, but if you watch this enough, you will, because you're just being introduced to this concept right now. And your mind is actually forming new neural synapses. And as you watch it over and over, like if I find a good audio, a good YouTube, I watch it over and over 10, 15, 20 times because I'm developing a better synapse and a neural net to help me to really understand that and internalize it and make the correlations and now be able to implement it and facilitate it and make it a part of my value system and see how I do that as I'm doing the actions. Because you got to get into action, right? Your energy and your actions, and I'm improving my skills. But again, the fastest way from point A to point B is utilizing the law of assumption. This right here. Knowing how to get yourself to that other side. And even in understanding those principles, there's a scale. If you don't understand the principles, then things will keep knocking you out of the law of assumption and bringing you back to your current environment, which is not pleasing to think about. So even with all of these things, like the levels of leadership, even with obeying the law of assumption and not breaking rules when the going gets tough, is going to be based on your understanding of the principles. So I want to bring to light, let's see, the definitions and the titles of some of these laws. You don't need to know very many to just literally start getting all of this in the flow and go from one magnificent win to the next. So just real quick before I get to those, attitude determines how far you will go. How far you go is determined by the principles you have internalized and made part of your value system. So again, and there's neuroplasticity. They used to say, could you believe that they used to believe, scientists used to think you can't expand the mind, you can't like grow in knowledge and understanding and in wisdom and in intelligence. That was during my lifetime. I never bought into that. That was just like something that went in one ear and out the other. I was like just totally against anything that I had personally come to believe that you couldn't get better. Like if I had an aptitude in high school that was low and I had to go out and dig ditches for a living because of that, and I couldn't improve as an individual and become a doctor, an attorney, an investor, that to me, that's how they used to label you and put you into categories, and people used to accept that. That's why, well, I didn't finish high school. I dropped out. It wasn't for me. But learning is for me, and there were probably some things I could have learned that I should have learned while I was in high school, but I'm not going to let anybody put me in a box. And it was just like, that's a waste of my time. If that's what you think, and you're teaching me, and you're the teacher, and you know, I'm out of here. So I didn't think it on that level like I could now. There was just something that didn't resonate. But I never believed that, oh, I have to be a ditch digger because I didn't graduate from high school, or I got an F in English. Didn't make sense to me. So title, relationship, production, these different categories, one's attitude breaks down internally much sooner. So somebody who doesn't understand the principles for these different levels of leadership, their attitude, the deception is going to set in much sooner. And for sure, if they're not working on understanding the principles, then the deception is going to cause them to quit. It's going to paralyze them. Their energy is going to go low. They're going to stop their actions, and they're not going to continue to pursue that thing and master the skills through repetition. The person at a 4 or 5 isn't going to get caught up in deception that early. When you go from one pursuit to another, like from, let's say, one company or one industry to another, you're always going to hit deception because it's something new, and you're conceiving of yourself as being a different person in that new pursuit, that new company, whatever it might be. So when somebody leaves another networking company and they did really well, there's a lot of, they've really gone high on some of the levels of leadership, but transferring that over to the new company and the new way of doing things, they're still going to hit deception. But a person who understands the principles is going to get right through that deception early on. Can I do this? I don't know if I can do this. Of course I can do this, and I'm just going to do the work that it takes to do it. Where somebody who hasn't developed that kind of behavior and attitude their energy is going to go low and their actions are going to stop. The cool thing about this environment is that we have people who have progressed in their levels of leadership, and they want to pass on this knowledge, this support, this encouragement in this culture, in this environment. Okay, So do you see how that is, and how your energy and your actions, maybe you're not calling people anymore, maybe you're not calling as many people. You fell out of inception. You went to deception. Remember where you were at in the beginning. In Healthy Mind and Body, they talk about if you fall into deception, it's the job of this program, Healthy Mind and Body, to pull you back to inception, where your actions are high, your energies are high, and you're improving your skills at a very rapid pace. Everything slows down when you get into deception and you take your eye off the ball. And so the law of assumption speeds everything up. It's kind of like the genie in the lamp. It is almost like when you do that, all the right things, it's like your wishes are being fulfilled. It's like your fantasies are becoming fact through some kind of magical power. But it's not magical. It's all set up. It's the modus operandi. It's the principles of cause and effect that have been woven into the universe by God. All right, so since God's the designer of it all, he probably knows the principles. And he probably wants, as us being his children, he probably wants to teach us those. I'm quite sure he doesn't get joy in our pain, but rather in our wins and going from one magnificent win to the next, and he never gets tired of us winning. Okay, so let's go to the last point, point number 5. Let's put it right here. Why does that do that? There should be an eraser. Just because there it is. Okay, it's temperamental. Okay, point number 5. Then we'll wrap this up. So the law of assumption, the law of non-resistance, and the law of allowing, or the law of receiving. So let's write these down. Law of assumption. So you're assuming something that is not yet. We do that all the time. Most people do it in the negative. They're assuming something bad's going to happen. Somebody's going to reject them. So what happens? Something bad happens. Somebody rejects them. So the law of assumption is very powerful, and when you understand the principles, it will start to govern and guide your behavior, your attitude. So we have the law of assumption. We have the law of non-resistance. Non-resistance. Most people resist. We're going to get into that. That will really apply to isogenics and the opportunities that keep showing up, but you resist them because something's come into your field, somebody's modeled something for you, and you want that. You want that to be a part of your life. You want to be able to go work out in the morning and take till 10 or 11 o'clock and do personal study for 2 hours in the morning because you don't have to go to work, because you have passive residual income coming in, and you're living in a nice house and you're studying in a nice office. You just get to own your life. And so we hold that out as modeling, and then there are people who are having a paper out every morning, and then they fix cars all day, and then they fix cars at night, and their window breaks, and it's all shattered. There's a contrast between that type of modeling and the results of that type of modeling. Which one would I rather have? Well, of course, for me, I would rather have the life that I own and be able to do what I want when I want with all the resources that I want. That's what I love what Esther Hicks says in these videos, and I'm going to put them in the below in the description. She talks about us wanting to be accepted, us wanting to have harmony with other people, and really having other people agree with us. And we call that harmonizing or resonating. And so she says, but what happens is we draw quick conclusions as to why things happen. We judge different things, and then we want our solutions to be given to us by other people. She said, you're not going to get the solutions as far as finding the solutions out there. The solutions are going to be found within. And really, everybody's lives are really holding out to show us what the different contrasts are so that we can start to pick and choose. And they come into our awareness. And that's called the complexities of the universe. I love how Witzel brings that up. And that everybody is creating their own unique complexity in their life. Some are artists, some are musicians, some are, digging ditches. Some are teachers, some are mechanics, some are paper route boys, whatever, right? So we have all of these different contrasts. And the contrasts are to allow us to decide on what am I asking for? What would I like to have? And so when we decide that we want that thing, if we don't understand the principles, we'll go about trying to receive those things in the wrong way. And also, another point that I wanted to make earlier on was once we see that modeling and we want those particular things, we don't really recognize all the other things that person is doing to have those things. And the doing that that person is doing is at a higher level on the scale of leadership in the different categories than I am in those categories. I'm at a lower level, and the person who's enjoying those things is at a higher level. They are being guided and directed and discipline their lives around principles they understand and see how they work in their lives. And then the person who's looking at their life saying, I want that, is at a lower level. They're at a 1, and this person's at a 4 or 5. So when we decide we want that thing, it always shows up. You guys, once we decide we want something, the answers always show up. You don't have to find them. They'll present themselves to you. That's the way it works. And here's the thing, though. We had miscalculations. The thing that showed up wasn't the, I'm waking up at, and working out and doing my study and don't start the day till 11 o'clock in the morning now, where I used to have to get up at 4:30 to deliver newspapers and then go to work all day. I'm now doing all these things, right, in the morning that I want to do. So that's not what shows up. What shows up is the work that will, and the actions it's going to take and the behaviors that it's going to take to enjoy that life. And so there's a miscalculation. Oh, I didn't know I was going to have to hold parties. I didn't know I was going to have to do sip-in samples. I didn't know I was going to have to call people. I didn't know I was going to be rejected, 100 times. And sign up 3 people out of those 100 or maybe 10 or whatever the case. I didn't know I was going to have to do that to have that. So there was a miscalculation. It was again, just a miscalculation. It was a blind spot. But that thing showed up for you to have to do. And then you go into deception right there because you don't know how to pick up the phone call and do what that person's doing when they pick up the phone and call. And so we go into deception. Instead of staying in inception, we go into deception, and that takes our energy down, our actions stop, and we stop improving our skills. If we would have stayed in the law of assumption, I would have learned those skills so much faster. All the right things would have been coming, the right mentors, the right people would have been showing up if I had stayed in the law of assumption. If I kept assuming. The law of non-resistance is the law that teaches you when you have to step into that thing you need to do in order to enjoy this life, you don't go to the negative. When you go to the negative, you're resisting the good from coming to you. That's the law of allowing. So let me give you an example. I'm at a level, whatever, let's say I'm at a level 4 in my leadership ability and in production. And I'm working with somebody who's at a level 1 in their leadership and production. I'm going to invite that person to do a meeting at their home because that's not even a challenge for me. It's like, this is how you do it. And it's like brushing my teeth. In fact, I enjoy doing presentations. But the person who's at a level 1 their behavior is being ran by a different set of behavior, ideas and concepts, surrounded around lack of principle. Because it's principle that took that person to a 4, took me to a 4, and this person hasn't yet internalized and created those principles as part of their value system. So therefore their behavior is, they're in fear, they're going to say, let me think about that. I don't think I'm quite ready to do it. I don't know who I could get. Or I'll invite some people, and then when it comes time, they didn't really invite them with like a level 4 leader would. And so, you know what, I don't have anybody to show up for the meeting. And they come up with all these excuses and rationalizations, which is really around the fear of unknowing, and they start to assume. See, the law of assumption for the leader is, I'm going to go do a meeting and people are going to show up. So the person who's at level 4, I'm going to do a meeting, the people are going to show up, we're going to have people that love it, they're going to sign up, they're going to join the business. And the person who's at a level 1 is, I'm not going to get anybody here. And then they're going to be mad when they come to do the presentation, nobody shows up. I don't even know who I talk to right now. In fact, a lot of people are rejecting me, so I don't think I could do a presentation at my home. They're being governed by deception now, lack of principle, lack of staying in the law of assumption, where if they were at a higher level, they would say, okay, I'm going to totally do the meeting and people are going to be here. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to start calling people. I'm going to extend the invitation. And they are going to love this information when they show up. That's a totally different behavior than the person who's at a level 1. And what is it that gets that person to behave that way? They're internalizing of different principles. And I'm going to tell you the one that gets you there the fastest without even having the skills. If you can develop the skill of the law of assumption and keep yourself over here, it will make you look like a genius. It'll make you look like the expert. Because everything that's going to show up to help you get there is going to happen. God's going to bring it in, and you're going to step on that bridge, and you're going to be there, and you're going to have success. Because God doesn't fail. And when you do your part, He'll do His part. And so by staying in the law of assumption and not resisting the things when they show up and not going to deception, keeping your mind on the law of assumption, keeping your mind at home, keeping your mind focused, guard your focus with your life. What I mean is guard your assuming with your life. Stay there. The person that stays there will always hold the meeting. They'll have the meeting. So you want the lifestyle, but you're not yet ready to have the courage to step into that action that it's going to take to have that lifestyle. When you understand that there are laws that will help you succeed that are greater than your abilities to succeed yourself, that's when you start trusting in God. That's when you start seeing my prayers are being answered. Yes, I had to do my part, and I had to have courage to step into that, but because I did it with faith, see, the law of assumption, when you don't resist it and you just allow, that's perfect faith. Faith moves mountains. It'll make things that seem seemingly impossible, possible. Because the right things start showing up. People that you didn't even know. People that you didn't even know are showing up to your presentation because you ran into them that morning, the day of the presentation. Why? Because you stayed in the law of assuming, and the law of attraction through cause and effect brought that into your awareness, and you stepped into it. This is huge right here. The law of assumption. Don't go into looking at all the things that are going to keep you from doing it. You stay in that place of, I've already had the awesome presentation. Like, you go in your mind to the end result. It was an awesome presentation. There are people's lives that we changed. And draw that out another 6 months, and now they have a huge team because they came to that meeting that I did that was awesome. Right? So when somebody asks you if they want to do a presentation or they want to do three-way calls with you, you want their lifestyle. And so the things that are going to help you have that lifestyle are showing up. The invitation comes. And do you want to have a presentation at your home? Do you want to do three-way calls together? Do you want to do a Zoom call? Let's get your associates trained up. Let's get you trained up. Why don't you buy that book that I've been telling you to get? They're going to recommend the resources for you to start moving forward up here. So if you don't buy the book, you're resisting the very thing that will allow you to have that lifestyle that you want, that's been held out for you. But you can't have something for nothing. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to muster up the courage. And it's so awesome working with somebody right now. You just point and they go. You say, jump this high, and they say, how? I say, jump, how high? They're doing the things just like I did. I just did what my mentors were telling me to do, even though it was uncomfortable. Because it's like, I'm going. Nothing's going to stop me from getting there. And I didn't fall into deception. Now, I'm not going to say I did it perfectly. There were times, and there are still times I fall into deception. But I am aware of it, and I catch myself, and I pull myself out of it right away. And I'll just finish with this. As far as living the law of assumption, you want to have that in your mind that way as much as you can, as often as you can. It's not the quality, it's the quantity. It's like, how often am I over here on the other side? And what does that feel like? I'm being that person when I'm doing that. When I'm being that person, I'm attracting everything that's equal to that person. And so, what was the point I was going to make? I can't remember now. So just when we're doing the assumption, though, and we're staying there as often as we can, I think whether this was the point I was going to make or not, is that I don't remember what I was going to say. But I will share this with you that, let's take a great golfer. I think many people are aware of the name Tiger Woods. Whatever you think about his life, I don't care. He's a great golfer. And I think it was Mike Dooley who wrote the book, Manifesting Change. Tiger Woods was taught an affirmation at a very young age. I'm a world-class, below-par champion golfer. When he was just young, could barely swing a club. And he just continually was saying that, as often as he can. And his dad's driving it into him. And he's out there practicing. Maybe he's hitting 5,000 balls a day. But what happens through the law of assumption? What I lack, the law of assumption takes over. It's that omnipotence in the universe that can move a mountain. And so when Tiger Woods is practicing, he's also saying, I'm the world-class below par champion golfer. And he sees himself holding the trophy, being on top of the podium. And Mike Dooley says, Tiger thinks that he's in control of his golf swing, that he's in control of all of those hundreds of thousands of muscles that can change things by just a slight degree that's going to make a difference in the way that ball goes. And through practice, he can get pretty proficient at it, but he says, I beg to differ. He's not in control. He's not in complete control of everything that causes him to win championship after championship. It's his instituting the law of assumption that got the mower, the guy who mows the grass at the golf course for the tournament, to be inspired to mow that grass a certain way. And the moisture that settled on the ground that day, that was instituted in Tiger's behalf. And Tiger does the putt, right? He thinks he knows how far back to bring it, but there's a greater power that takes over his nervous system. And it actually is in control of Tiger when he makes the putt. And he has these incredible putts that look like they're going to miss, and then it goes back the other way and looks like it's going to miss. And Mike Dooley brings up this one where the ball was going like that, and it overcompensates, and then it starts coming back to the hole, and it's just about to fall in, but it's slowing down, and it's not quite going fast enough, and the wind picks up and blows the ball in right over the edge. Tiger is bringing all of those things that answers our prayers that are beyond our ability to bring into our lives. That's the law of assumption. That's the part that we need to discipline ourselves to do correctly by not resisting, but allowing. And so when somebody asks you to do something in this business, stay in the law of assumption and step into that thing and just find the courage to do it. And all of these things that we've been talking about, the fastest way from point A to point B is start to blueprint for you specifics of what it's like to be on that other side. It's what I did. It's what started changing things for me and bringing the right people and me creating the right actions. Like Tiger Woods, I started creating the right actions doing PowerPoints. How I articulated those PowerPoints as I was doing them. Everything. And through my practice of that and getting in alignment with the law of allowing that's trying to urge me to do things a certain way, I become more attuned to doing those things the way that they need to be done, which this greater power, God, knows. And so, again, the law of assumption was and still is and is always going to be the number one priority for me. And making sure that I'm assuming that person and getting into the feeling of what it's like to now have taken ownership. Not what is it like when I'm going to take ownership. And I blueprint that out and I write out 3x5 cards and I get very clear on what are the circumstances that are taking place. What are the ranks? What are the organization, what does that look like, and what are the results, and what's happening to people in my organization, and getting into the feeling of that. I create triggers around that. That's what I was talking about, the 3x5 on the other module. You make the 3x5, and you're going to come up with bullet point triggers of what it's like now that you're over on that side. You've taken ownership of it, and you want to do that as often as you can throughout the day. The best time to do it is in the morning and really get into it with no distractions, and then just kind of try to bring it up while you're going throughout the day. Hold the 3x5 in your card. After you've done it so long, you can just know the 3x5 cards in your pocket, and you start to get into that you practiced that morning. You get into it easier, and you start to be that person. When you're being that person, you're like the magnet that's attracting like things. Like attracts like. So when I'm being that, even though I'm over here on the left side and my circumstances are different, my circumstances start to morph into becoming that person on the other side. We call that manifesting. It becomes a manifestation of my faith. And we can incrementally improve our faith and our business and our leadership skills and all of that. So with that, I'm going to end there. This went long, but this is this is gold. This is like getting to the meat of it. This is the pearl of great price. And most people wouldn't give it the time of day because they would rather do anything but think and reason and critically think. So if you got through this entire presentation, and it might have taken you more than one sitting, that's fine. But if you got through it and you're really internalizing it, and you're going back and listening again, and you're scripting things out, you're making your 3x5 cards, and you're getting better and better at assuming, and you're taking the time in the morning to make sure you do that with your eyes closed, and whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you're getting into that place. And now you know what it feels like, and you can practice getting into it throughout the day often. Congratulations. And you are going to see things happen very quickly. And it's through this law of assumption and doing this work, and along with all the other things that are going on, all the other dynamics, you're going to have a quantum leap in your life. You will not be the same person 6 months, a year and a half from now. And there's no end to this. I am still working. I will be working on improving myself and putting myself in alignment and disciplining myself to actually facilitate those principles in my life for the rest of my life. And it's an awesome journey, and it's one that, they ask, what at the end of your life, I talked about this in the other module, what do you regret? It wasn't the things that they did that they regretted, it was the things they didn't do. And so we all have a decision. We all have the same amount of time. What things are you going to do with that time? What's worthy of your time? What's going to have the greatest impact on you forever? This stuff you get to take with you forever. And the lives that you changed, that gets to go with you forever. The pearls, the rubies, the cars, the homes, that's just going to allow you to enjoy life at a high level. It's who you become and who you help others to become in this process. And that's bringing heaven to earth, and we'll just continue on this process when we are in heaven, right? All right, thanks you guys. We'll see you on the next module.